Few orbits pass, then we're dealt 9-7 suited in the cutoff. Player in middle position limps in. The hijack limps in as well. This player recently got stacked after getting it all in for 1100 with pocket 5s against pocket kings on a 10-4-3 rainbow board. Not sure how that happened. He rebought, and I want to play hands with him, especially in position. I call. The small blind isn't keeping it friendly. He raises to 70. The other two limpers call. I'm getting almost 4-1, closing the action in position. I call for 60 more. We're going 4 ways to the flop. The dealer puts out king 6-5 with 2 hearts. We flop a straight flush draw. The small blind may not like the situation that he's found himself in. He checks. The middle position player in the hijack check as well. I want to be taking a stab at it. I bet 170. I could reasonably have pocket 6s or 5s, king 6 or king 5 suited, and 6-5 suited. The small blind folds. He's the player that I was most concerned about. Middle position player lets his cards go. The action's on the wild man in the hijack. He doesn't want to give up just yet. He calls. There's no way he's going to be very strong after initially checking with only me behind him. We're heads up. The turn is the ace of spades. It probably didn't help the opponent. I've seen him play all kinds of random, unsuited, unconnected cards, so it's tough for me to know for sure. He checks. It's usually not a great idea to bluff guys like this, but my hand has so much potential even if I get called, and I just can't help myself. I bet 440. The opponent is tanking. Please don't jam on me, dude. He eventually folds. That's a fun hand right off the bat. We get a great flop and semi-bluff our way to victory. It's a big pot that comes towards us. We're immediately up several hundred. I pick up pocket jiggities under the gun. I raise to 30. The player on my left 3 bets to 90. This is a very strong move. He should almost never be bluffing in this spot. A lot of the time he's going to have me crushed. I call, very much hoping to drill a set. We're heads up. The flop comes 4-4 deuce with 2 hearts. Probably no lead change. I check. The opponent down bets to 50. I dial my accountant's number. He confirms that I can afford this amount. I call. The turn is the 5 of clubs. I check. This time, under the gun +1 bets 200. What happened to 50, dude? I like that price a lot better. The only hand that I can beat that he play this way is some sort of ace-high flush draw. I might be drawing dead to 2 outs. Again, I'm in a tough spot. I call once more, hoping that I won't have to face a river bet. The dealer puts out the 9 of clubs. The backdoor flush gets there. I check. I glance at my opponent's playbook, and the page for checking back has been ripped out. He fires for 350. Once again, I don't beat anything that my opponent is betting for value. I can conceivably beat a missed heart draw, and that's it. Luckily, my accountant is still on the phone. He says that my hand is basically face up, and 350 is too much. Kind of agree with him, but this is the same guy who advised me to invest big in Beanie Babies several years ago, so I can't fully trust him. I do what I want, even though I know before the cards are even turned over that I'm not ahead.
Nice one. Chop it up.
The player has pocket jiggities as well. I'm relieved to split the pot. I thought it was way more likely that we were going to lose a sizable portion of my stack. Next we've got queen jack suited in the hijack. I raised to 30. The small blind wants to play for more. He 3 bets to 120. According to Upswing, this is what the small blind's range should look like when facing a raise from the hijack. You can see that he's mostly supposed to be 3-betting with a lot of hands that are stronger than mine, but I'm in position, closing the action, so when we go back to what my range should look like, we see queen jack suited as a pure call, which is interesting because we can actually fold some slightly better suited Broadway cards occasionally. Calling is what I do. We're heads up. The flop comes queen 10-3 with 2 diamonds. We have top pair, a flush draw, and a backdoor straight draw. We absolutely smash it. Small blind down bets to 80. I consider 2 options. I could raise, but if I do that, I'm probably only getting folds from hands that are worse than mine, like ace-king. I'm pretty much flipping or a slight dog against overpairs, depending on whether or not those combos contain a diamond. I call because my hand has value and still a lot of potential. I'm happy to keep the pot relatively small until I improve. The turn is the 5 of spades. It's a brick. Now we see the small blind increase the pressure. He bets 300. It's interesting. 2 of the queens are accounted for, so there's only one possible combination of queens that the player's going to have. And if you remember the range that this player's supposed to be 3-betting, he shouldn't have pocket 10s or worse, or queen 10, meaning that it's extremely likely that I'm up against one pair at the absolute best. I don't know that the player would necessarily bet hands like aces, kings, or ace-queen. The way that he's played it so far feels a lot more like a semi-bluff of some sort, with either ace-king or a flush draw. I don't want to get it all in against hands that are better than mine, and I want to keep his semi-bluffs in since I could be holding a handful of his outs. I call. This has got to be scary for the small blind no matter what he has. The river is the 8 of diamonds. We make the 3rd nuts. The player looks back at his hand to check and see if he has the diamond. That's a great sign. If he has 2 diamonds, he should already know. Perhaps I really am up against aces, kings, or queens, and I can get paid. The pot is set up perfectly for me to get it all in. I have 800 left. The opponent has a bit more with a 1K chip and some change. He rips it in for me. Perhaps he has aces with the ace of diamonds and feels comfortable going for value. Maybe he has ace king with the ace of diamonds and is jamming as a bluff. There's still a small chance that he has top set. He could potentially have a smaller flush or the nuts as well. I'm never going anywhere. I call. Then we get some heartbreaking news. The small blind has ace king of diamonds. We get flush over flushed in a massive pot.
That's sick. Nice then. You have me covered?
He indeed has us covered. That one's painful. We get beaten for the maximum in a giant cooler. I'm not sure there's much I could have done differently. I'm surprised to find out that despite me having top pair and a lot of the opponent's outs, he was actually a decent favorite to win the hand on the flop. If I jammed on the turn for 800 more, he still would have been getting more than 2 to 1 on a call, meaning that he's getting good enough pot odds to profitably call it off, given the fact that he's winning 36% of the time. In this one, I pick up pocket aces myself. About time we see a real hand of strength this session. I raised a 30 from under the gun. Under the gun +1 calls. Big blind calls, we go 3 ways to the flop. It's 9-8-6 with 2 clubs. It's a nightmare since our opponents are going to hit this hard once they flat my pre-flop raise. I don't even have the ace of clubs to fall back on. The situation gets worse. The big blind leads for 50. I already don't like it, but I'm not folding. I call. The player behind me folds. I'll feel much better. Under the gun +1 calls. We don't always get what we want. The turn is the 4 of spades. It shouldn't change anything. The big blind bets 160. There's really only one good river card for me, and I could actually already be drawing dead. Plus I have 2 opponents to beat. I still think I could be in the lead. I call. I'm skeptical though. Under the gun +1 gives me one more reason to get out of the hand. He raises to 540. I haven't been in one good spot today. It's all been an uphill battle. The big blind calls the 540, which makes me think that he likely has a draw and doesn't have anything too strong, or else he would have jammed. It doesn't matter too much. I'm done with this. I fold. The river is the king of diamonds. The big blind checks. I stop recording, but under the gun +1 bets 670. The big blind folds queen jack of clubs face up. The player on my left would later tell me that he had 7-5 suited and flopped the bottom end of the straight. We at least made the right laydown. I'm stuck 2400 when I make it to the main game and pick up ace-5 suited in the big blind. Under the gun +1 limps in. The hijack raises to 40. I call for 30 more. Under the gun +1 folds. We're heads up, out of position. The flop comes king 7-3 with 2 clubs. We've got the nut flush draw with 1 over and a backdoor straight draw. I check to the pre-flop raiser. He reaches for chips, then bets 60. I won't be getting flush over flush to this hand. I call. I just want a club, like the entire cast of Jersey Shore. We get the 8 of spades, no club. The situation is sad. I check. The hijack is being a bully. He bets 140. We have a lot of outs, including possibly an ace. I call. Come on, let us get there one time for DJ Pauly D. No club for him either. It's the ace of diamonds. We make top pair. Our hand has a lot of showdown value. I check. The hijack is considering whether or not he wants to bet. He would mostly be repping ace king or better. He wants to get a count. I make it so my chips are clearly visible. I don't feel great about calling a large bet. Ultimately, the opponent doesn't pull the trigger. He checks back. That's good news. I happily show our top pair. It's a winner. The fact that the hijack was considering betting the river and the way that he checked makes me believe that we were ahead the whole time. Maybe he had something like a smaller club or spade draw. I like the new direction that we're going in, and it's not over. We pick up pocket queens in the hijack. Under the gun +1 opens at 30. He's a good young pro. Seems like a nice guy. We've got to get him though. I 3-bet to 100. Calling also would have been fine since the initial pre-flop raiser opened from early position. The button cold calls the 3-bet. This particular player is tight. He may have done this with ace king, ace queen suited, queens, jacks, or 10s. Under the gun +1 calls for 70 more. I can definitely rule out aces and kings from him, and probably ace king as well. We go 3 ways to the flop. It's jack 7 deuce with 2 spades. We still have an overpair, but I probably wouldn't have 3-bet jacks or worse pre-flop. This means that my range is capped at 1 pair, which is exactly what I have. Under the gun +1 checks. I can't allow anyone to see a free card. I bet 200. If both players fold, that'd be totally fine with me. The button lets his hand go. Luckily, he didn't have jacks. Under the gun +1 is a little stickier. If he jams, I'm gonna have to call it off, hoping that he has ace-jack suited or a flush draw. He calls. He seems strong and still might have done that with a set. The fight isn't over. The turn is the 9 of clubs. The opponent checks. I'm not sure I want to play for it all anymore. I check back. The river is the king of diamonds. I no longer beat flush draws containing a king, ace king, or king jack. Under the gun +1 checks. Doesn't make much sense to bet at this point. I check back. I'm delighted to see that the player doesn't have any of those hands that I previously mentioned. He flopped the world with 10-9 of spades. He had a straight flush draw, then turned second pair, but bricked the river. We win a nice sized pot. Not many chips, but they're mostly black, $100 ones. Those are acceptable. Just feels good to be back on the right track. Now we've got pocket 7s on the button. folds to me, I raise to 30. The small blind calls, the big blind calls as well. He's our old pal, Set Genie. You've probably seen him in previous vlogs. Every time he's around and I have a pocket pair, I make a set. That's how he earned his nickname. He knows this, and he should know better than to get involved in hands with me. I even do the friendly thing and try to remind him of his powers so he can tread carefully.
All right, Set Genie.
We're going 3 ways to the flop. The dealer puts out Queen 8-3 with 2 spades. I guess the Genie has no more magic in him. We all check. The turn is the 5 of hearts. We all check again. This hand is dumb. The river is the 7 of hearts. The Set Genie comes through when it's crunch time. How dare you ever doubt his abilities? What's even better is that the small blind bets 40. Set Genie calls the 40. I have a very hidden hand. I raise to 200. Neither player has much. They both fold. We get another win to close out the session.
Set Genie.
Oh wow, that's really
You're the man. I don't miss when you're around.